It's okay.
All right. Well, so Bergen, it's been a while. What are you thinking of the site? How do you like it so far?
I like how we've been able to make the top bar a little bit different from just words to like the thick, make it blue. That was a big change. Maybe we can look into getting it started up with like putting some actual stuff onto the pages.
Cool. Yeah. So do you know which of the pages you want to kind of tackle first?
Um, I would kind of like to go into like the calendar page.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that might be one of the most fun things to tackle. Do you know, Bergen, kind of how you want the calendar page to look? Do you want it to kind of look like a given month, or do you want it just to kind of be like a list of here's the upcoming things, or what are you thinking?
I kind of thought like we'd have a calendar of like it would just say here are the dates. So just like a normal calendar for the month, and then it would say this Wednesday we're doing this, and then whoever has the lesson on Sunday, we could kind of put that in because we do combine this, so we could do put that together, have it so they know, and then we can give them a link to their stuff.
Cool. So let me pull up right now. Here, I'll share my screen here for just a second. All right. My computer's going really slow tonight. All right. So the way the site looks right now, kind of when I browse through it, looks like, kind of each of the different pages. My computer would not be slow, so go faster. What is making my computer slow? Let me see real quick. Interesting. Apparently nothing. Like my computer doesn't even, it's not saying that it's super busy, but it's going way slow. Well, I'll check into it later, figure it out. But anyway, yeah, so you have kind of each of these pages in this calendar page. Right now we just have an image of, like if you highlight, you can just see it's just one image of a month. So are you thinking that kind of we would have like just whatever the current month is would show right here, but maybe a little bit bigger? Or are you thinking like this plus a list down here below it, kind of in this area?
So I was thinking, like what you said, like right in the middle, we would put like a calendar that we can put writing on the calendar, like on Wednesday.
So think about that from a usability standpoint, right? The calendar would have to be pretty big, and then your writing is going to be really small. So it might not be the easiest thing to see. If you had a calendar like what Mike has, and then below that calendar you had perhaps a list. So you said below it you had a week, and you gave the date. So you had a date range. So this was week. What's Sunday, Mike? The 5th.
Yeah, or maybe the 6th.
The 6th. So it'd be like April 6th through April 12th, and then below that you had bullet points where it was like Wednesday, April 8th, we're doing this. Sunday, April 12th, Bergen's teaching the lesson on the atonement. Or, you know what I mean? So if you had a comment, so they could quickly see on the calendar, give them a good visual reference, then underneath it actually gave them a list of what those dates were. Give you more place that you could write stuff for them to see. Just from a user experience, it's kind of hard. And Mike, you might have a different thought and opinion, but from a user experience, if you have a calendar and you try to write in the calendar, you're limited space, right? Because you have a square, whether it's a 2x2 square, you know.
Yeah.
It might limit you.
Yeah.
So a bullet point might be
Yeah.
better. Here's a basic calendar, and then below it, it's like Wednesday, April 6th is this. When Tuesday, April 12th is this. Right?
Yeah, usually if you want to put like something that looks like a calendar, the nice thing about that is that it's going to look very similar to something that people are used to looking at. So it, kind of visually they can just see which boxes are empty and immediately know that there's nothing on those days. So that's nice. But the downside, like Matt's saying, is just that usually if you ever do that, what you need to also do is make it so that when you click, you know, like the little blue box in that calendar that says Sunday's lesson is this, will have to only have like a little bit of text when it's on the calendar, and then you'd click it and you would kind of zoom in. But doing all that, like figuring out where everything goes on the screen, because the calendar changes for every single day, like you would have to figure out how to redraw the calendar on that date. And then you would also have to figure out how to make the zooming thing work. It's quite a bit more work, so I think maybe what we should do is start with just kind of a list of what's coming up in the near future, and then and we can even start off like not even writing any code to do that. We can just write the HTML by hand, and every time you update it, it will auto-update on the site because I have the Dropbox sync going on. And so we could do that kind of as a step one. And then once we have that working, then maybe what we should do is try to write some code that generates the list for you, so that you could just have kind of like a list of here's all the dates and the things that are happening on those dates, and then a piece of code would take that list and turn it into the HTML for us. And then once we're done with those two steps, then maybe we can come back and say, okay, is there a way that we can draw this so that we only show you know, the next 7 days worth of information, or maybe we can even make it so that instead of us running the code kind of locally on your computer, and then your computer changes the HTML, we could have the code get run every time someone hits the page, so that you don't have to ever update it. You don't ever have to be running it all the time on your computer. So that would kind of be my idea of how to break up that whole problem into maybe a few smaller chunks.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look at kind of the basics of how to do something like that. So I'm going to share my screen here one more time. My computer will ever do a thing. Okay, whoa, Inception. All right. Okay, so let me zoom in my editor here, and if we come over to the content area and look at the calendar page, this is where right now we just have kind of one image tag. And then what we want to do is make it something a little bit more than that. And so maybe a good place to start would be, let's look at, are we using Bootstrap? Is that what we're using for this one? I'm trying to remember.
What were you saying, Mike?
I'm trying to remember which, oh, okay, yeah, so we're using Foundation CSS for this site. There's another popular one called Bootstrap, and I always forget which one I'm using on each different project. So let's just think about what would that be called. So let's just look at some features here on the Foundation site, and we're going to look for something that just kind of looks like what we want to do. None of this stuff, none of this stuff. Well, that wasn't what we wanted. Oh, here we go. Docs. Maybe this is where we go. All right, this is looking a little more like what we need. So let's see, they kind of have a navigation set of tools, a media set of tools, buttons, typography, content. So maybe like one of these. Okay, that's just a drop-down thing. Where did content go? Oh, here we go. Pricing tables. Oh, not very useful for us.
It's surprising they don't have one called calendar.
What was that?
Surprising they don't have one called like calendar.
Yeah, you'd think that that might be pretty common, but it doesn't look like it's something that they specifically have a tool for. So what I'm thinking we could do is something like a table. And so a table is just it's just a way of saying, hey, I'm going to have like lines of information, and they're going to line up sort of like a spreadsheet, except you're just worrying about the kind of the headers across the top row. You don't sort of have like a separate set of numbers along the left, by default at least. And so so I'm thinking that what we could do is kind of organize the upcoming list of events as a table, and you can see kind of the way that they structure that in HTML is that you create a table element, and then you create what's called a T head or a table head, and you put a table row inside of there, and then some table headers inside of that. And so this is kind of the way that it knows which things to group up horizontally and which things to group up vertically, is because you kind of nest things inside of a row, and then all the things in that row will be grouped up horizontally. And you can use these width attributes to kind of tell it like, oh, this one should be bigger than that one, stuff like that. So so we can use that. It looks like we don't have to do anything specific to get our table stuff rendering generally in sort of a sane way. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to start out. Oh, head. And what kind of information do you guys think we should have each time we have like an event coming up, something on the calendar? What piece of information is someone going to need to know about that?
Date, time, and maybe what we're doing.
Activity, event. Yep.
Yeah, we can call it like activity, and then maybe like a description. So like if the activity is Sunday lesson, then the description can be like, this week's lesson is 3rd Nephi 18 or something like that. So we'll kind of have those be the things that are in the top of the table, and then down here we'll just make, so basically for each activity we're going to end up having a row, and each row should have 3 things in it. So up here we had the header, and the nice thing about making it, instead of just making it another row, like we could just have all these rows be stacked, but if you tell it to be a head row, then even if you end up getting a lot of rows, when you scroll down it'll kind of keep the head right there so that people can see it. That's kind of like locking the top row if you've done that in Excel. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, what's like an upcoming event? What can you think of one that's coming up on the calendar, Berg?
We have the sand dunes coming up.
Cool. So the activity will be sand dunes, and what's the date and time of that?
The date should be sometime later this month.
So give them a date. So say April.
April. Let's just say, when's a Friday?
Let me find a calendar real fast, Mike.
Just one second. It's like
it's going to be like the 17th and 18th, I think, right? Oh, 24th, 25th.
So we'll just put it down as April 24th for now, and or I guess we can just say 24th, 25th, and then the description will be what are you guys going to do at the sand dunes? Are you guys camping?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do something like that. And then I'm going to come over here. Oh, so I had our site over here, and remember we have to run the little, well, let me just show you what happens if we don't, if we forget to run the build thing, and we look at Dropbox, Troop 1343, built, calendar.html. So it hasn't changed, and that's because remember we wrote that little Ruby script that takes each of the pages and like glues them into the kind of layout of the whole thing. Oh. So if we rerun that little Ruby build, now we can see we have a calendar here. Awesome. And so this would kind of be the very beginnings, so the very first thing we could do is that Bergen could just kind of manually, as things are coming up, or once this thing is done, you could come in and just erase it. Or when you have another event coming up, you could add another thing here and say, you know, April 26th, shower. Your moms think you stink. Something like that. And each time you do that, just run the build script. And actually, we can go to, we'll close this one, and if we go to the real site, each time I update this on my computer, it should update on the real site pretty quickly. There we go. So, so this should be a quick way to just kind of be able to just make those changes by hand and just kind of get into the rhythm of what the HTML looks like in order to generate this. And as an extra, if you wanted to kind of go one step further, let me look for something here real quick. Callouts and prompts, panels. Dash. Whoa. Many things. Apparently there are many things that this can do.
Bacon pancakes.
Labels. Bacon pancakes. Alright, so let's look up labels here really quick. So if you wanted to make your calendar list, let me get rid of this for a second here. Keep accidentally going to that. So if you wanted to make this really cool, one thing you could use is what this thing calls labels. And so if you go to Foundation, if you just Google for Foundation CSS, you'll find this site. You can find the docs and look for labels, how to do labels. And it's going to have some information here. I'll drop in one just as kind of an example and say, oh, I wanted to come back over here. And on this one, we're going to put a break in here. And then just try putting in here, we're going to say, how do you do this thing? So it just says round alert label. So if I just say label save that, build, then 1343. So you could start to put like these little labels on the calendar, and sort of putting some color on here makes it easy to just call out which things are most important or not important. Or you could, come up with a scheme of like, oh, we always label camping trips with a green label, and Sunday activities are always a blue label, or whatever you want to do. So that would be like extra credit, is if you start to kind of do that stuff. So I think that's probably a good place for us to start this week, and then next week we can try to figure out a way to say, can we write some code that generates this calendar page for us, so that each time we run ruby build.rb, it would actually, we can just kind of have a list of the upcoming events and just manage the list, and each time we run build, it'll actually figure out which ones are the upcoming events and which ones are already passed, and it will generate this table for us so that we don't have to write all the HTML by hand.
Hey Mike, can you go back real quick, because you within the in Foundation CSS, it didn't show you the alert. You had to inspect that element right there, right?
Right. So so the way you do that is, and you can do this, Bergen, on any HTML page on the whole internet, because every time you tell your browser to load this web page, go to the site, it's actually downloading all of that HTML and CSS and all the images, and so that's all now on your computer. And normally it just renders the way you expect it to look. But if you're ever curious, like, oh, how did they do that thing on this website, you can right-click on anything, anywhere, basically, and hit Inspect Element. And that will bring up this thing called the Developer Tools, which does lots of different things. Most of them we probably shouldn't worry about right now, but one of the main ones is you can see it highlighted like, oh, this is that part of the page that you just clicked on and asked me about. That's what this thing is. It's right here. And so let me see if I can, I can even zoom in on this. That's cool. So let's see. Okay, made it a little bit bigger here. So you can see that they've made a div class row, and they put some div with a class of large 2 columns. And then this specific thing that we clicked on is a span, and you can see exactly how they wrote that HTML in order to make that part of their page. And so that's why I was able to just say, oh, okay, let me take that, and you can even say copy this, and then if we went back to our page, we could just say something up here like, oh, an H1 tag, let's just put that thing in there, build it, and then go back to our page one more time. And there we go, it showed up. And so you can't always just copy and paste just that one piece, because lots of times the only reason this one piece here works, like the reason it knows how to take just this much HTML and turn it into like a thing with a red background and have rounded corners and all that stuff is actually because these classes here will match up to some CSS rules that have already been written somewhere else on that page. But because we know that we're using the Foundation CSS on our page, just like they're using it on their page, then we know that we can pretty safely just kind of copy something that they're doing and try to make it work on our page as well. So, any other questions? Was there anything else that I went over too fast?
Just so I get the homework done, we'll go in and we'll work on building the calendar with some events and add some, I like that, add some of the call-outs or the, what'd you call it, those alerts?
Yeah, Foundation calls them labels.
Yeah, labels.
And so it looks like you can have a label success, which would be green, or a label alert, which is red. I'm sure they have lots of other options. If you look up Foundation labels, I'm sure they'll have a bunch of other things in here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then real quick, Mike, we'll just update this let's see. This is the file on. Okay, so that was the calendar HTML. All right. Beauty.
Yep.
And then.
Yep. So just update calendar.html and then run the Ruby build, and you should be able to just go look on troop1343.com and see that it looks the same way.
So one other question, because it's been probably 6 weeks since we did it. Where? I'm going to ask Bergen. Where do you go run the Ruby build? Do you remember?
Isn't it in the text that we were in?
Where?
Is it in the text?
What?
Wasn't it in the text wrangler?
So, well, we're using Text Wrangler as the what we're writing the code on.
Okay. So Text Wrangler is where you're going to go to edit the HTML to change the events. Since obviously April 26th, go home and shower, your moms think you stink is not actually an activity for your scout troop. So that's where you'll go to edit that stuff, and then the place that you go to run the ruby build.rb command is on the terminal. So have you guys run that before?
Yeah, we have. I want to see if Bergen's not going to remember where it is. So.
Okay, I'll share my screen one more time, and I'll just kind of show you how to start that. So are you seeing my screen here? So if you go to Spotlight and say Terminal, hit this, and it's going to open this little terminal thing right here. Mine was all black. I swipe over and I have it kind of over here on the side, but that doesn't matter. You can just say terminal. And then the main thing about the terminal is that when you first open it, you're going to be in your home directory. So this is like you can ask it, what are all the files and folders in this directory right now? And you can ask that question by saying ls, which is like list, show me a list. So you can see that in here I have my downloads folders in here, and my music folder, and my movies folder, but also my Dropbox folder. So I'm going to say, go into my Dropbox folder, and I do that by saying cd Dropbox. CD stands for change directory, and then I can ask it that question again, like, well, what's in here? Where am I now? And if I say ls, I can see, oh, here's this Troop 1343 site. So go to that thing, and then I can ask it, what's in here? And here I'll see build.rb. So now I can say ruby build.rb and just run that, and now I will have rebuilt the site. Okay, so that, I mean, it's a little bit tricky to get used to.
Mike, will you do me a favor?
Yep.
Will you just copy that and email it over?
Yep.
We'll change directory commands and such.
Yeah, I'll just send this whole thing from like where I opened my terminal to where I finished it.
Okay. You can send it to Bergen's email.
Sure. Bergen, what's your email? Well, actually, never mind. I'll ask you what it is after we're done recording this, so that we don't publish it to the whole internet. I just remembered that.
Good call. Sorry.
All right, so do you guys have just one more minute? I just wanted to show something to Bergen real quick. So this is, you should definitely keep working on your website. You have your homework, but I tried to go a little easy on your homework specifically because I kind of wanted to show you this thing that I've been working on for fun. And I think it would be an interesting way for you to get your hands dirty with a little bit more kind of coding stuff without it being super complex. So I'm going to share now just my web browser here, and we are going to go to this page. So this page is showoff.reesd.com. I'll send that link over to you. And essentially what it is, so like if I go to it from scratch, I haven't done anything yet. It's a way of creating drawings. So there's this form of drawings that your web browser supports called SVG. And one thing about SVG is normally if I open an image on my computer, so let's say I open this calendar.png, right? And so if I open this picture on my computer or in my browser and I start zooming in on it, as I zoom in, it gets more and more blurry. Let's see, well, my computer won't even zoom further than that. So you can see that now this stuff up here looks really, really blurry. It's really hard to read. And that's because the only thing that the computer knows about this image is what each of the dots are supposed to be. So if I zoom in, I'm making each of those dots bigger. And an SVG is different because what an SVG does is it explains to your computer how to draw something. And so you tell it something like, please make a circle that's this big on this part of the screen. And then when you zoom in, if I zoom in this site, I can keep zooming in, and my circle never looks blurry or crooked. It always looks nice and smooth because I didn't tell my computer which dots to draw. I told it where to draw the circle. So SVGs are just kind of this interesting way of trying to tell the computer what to draw. And normally you write SVG a lot like HTML, but I wrote this little translator so that you could try to write it a little bit more simply. And when you go to this page, you can click on any of these examples, and it will show you right here, this is the code to draw that thing, and you can change anything you want. So like we could say, oh, make this one red. And if I hit draw this, it'll go back and figure out how to draw. It'll recreate the image from your instructions. Or we could say, oh, make this thing, this octagon that's in the middle, make it have a radius of 10 instead of 40. And now it drew it so small that it's hidden behind this other thing. Or I could say, draw it size 45. And now it's really big, and it's running into these other things out here. And so it's just kind of meant as a way to play around and kind of try out a few ideas. And the nice thing about it is that you can just change whatever you want, right here in this one place, and just hit a button, and it's immediately going to redraw. You don't have to install anything or run anything. You can just kind of play around with these things and hit them. And then if you ever draw something that looks pretty cool to you, like I drew this Triforce from Zelda. And so if you ever draw something that you like, you can publish it, and immediately it goes down here into this list of recently published drawings, where people can just kind of share different ideas of things they've drawn, and you can click on any of the things that other people have drawn and see what code they use to create that drawing. So that's just if you're interested, if you kind of want to try out something that's a different kind of coding. That's just another way to write some code. So that's it. So I just wanted to show you because it's something I've been working on, and I have found out that it's kind of fun to draw something with code. And sometimes it's a little bit cooler to be able to send someone like a drawing that you made rather than like, here's this website that has some information on it, which is probably more helpful than sending them a drawing, but not always as much fun.
You can draw a tent for the campouts to add into your calendar.
Yeah, and you could actually take anything that you draw on that website, you could actually download and put it on your website, and it would work in other people's browsers as well.
Okay, Mike, next week we have spring break. We'll be in St. George. We can still do it because we have Wi-Fi connection down there if you want to still do it. I don't know what your schedule looks like, but
yeah, I don't got anything major on my schedule next week, so I'm happy to do it again. But maybe just text me on Wednesday if you guys are feeling like it's still going to work out. But if you guys are just having too much fun and eating too many marshmallows or something, then you guys can call it off for the week. So it's up to you.
Okay. Love it. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, good luck, guys. I'm excited to see what the calendar looks like next week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thanks.
So.